Hello, everyone. Thanks for making the time to join us this evening. My name is Michael. I'm the events coordinator and publicist at Annie Bloom's Books. For those of you who aren't familiar with the store, we're located in Multnomah Village in the heart of Portland, Oregon. We've been around for 43 years now. We're open on weekdays from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and weekends from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Our website is always open. You can shop there day and night at annieblooms.com. I am going to put into the chat the link for this event where you've probably been before, but you can go back there now and buy all of the authors' books. We would really appreciate that, as would the authors, I'm sure. We offer curbside pickup, in-store pickup, local delivery, and various shipping and delivery options. I'm admitting a couple more people. Welcome, welcome, new folks. We have some great events coming up next Tuesday, the 22nd at 7 p.m. Local author Ann Stinson, who's a regular shopper at Annie Bloom's, has a new memoir out called The Ground at My Feet, Sustaining a Family and a Forest. And Ann's going to be joined by Idaho author Louise Wagenknecht, whose new book is Shadows on the Klamath, A Woman in the Woods. So they're both like forestry related memoirs and published by Oregon State University Press. And 2 weeks after that, on March 8th, Phil Margolin, who's a local thriller author who's read many, many times at Annie Bloom's, is going to be back for his latest Robin Lockwood mystery called The Darkest Place. And a couple weeks after that, Portland author Mark McDonald is going to be here with his sister, who he recently found out was his sister. The book is called Love and Genetics. It's about Mark, an adoptee who connects with his birth sister and his birth family. So that should be cool too. And another person coming in. Welcome, everyone. Great to see so many names here. Tonight, we have Portland author Anita Kelly, their new novel, Love and Other Disasters. Anita is joined by the authors Timothy Janovsky and Alison Cochrun. There'll be a Q&A at the end of the reading and discussion. So feel free to type your questions into the chat. We're glad that Jacqueline is happy to be here. Hello, Jacqueline. And I'll be happy to read the questions out loud later. You can also come on the screen if you're feeling daring and read your questions out loud. You can just click on the little hand icon that's in the reactions menu that's down there at the bottom of the screen. And I can call on you to ask a question during that time. Let me tell you about Love and Other Disasters. The first openly non-binary contestant on America's favorite cooking show falls for their clumsy competitor in this delicious romantic comedy debut that USA Today hailed as an essential read. Recently divorced and on the verge of bankruptcy, Dahlia Woodson is ready to reinvent herself on the popular reality competition show Chef Special. Too bad the first memorable move she makes is falling flat on her face, sending fish tacos flying. Not quite the fresh start she was hoping for. Still, she's focused on winning until she meets someone she might want a future with more than she needs the prize money. After announcing their pronouns on national television, London Parker has enough on their mind without worrying about the klutzy competitor stationed in front of them. They're there to prove the trolls, including a fellow contestant and their dad, wrong, and falling in love was never part of the plan. As London and Dahlia get closer, reality starts to fall away. Goodbye, guilt about divorce, anxiety about uncertain futures, and stress from transphobia. Hello, hilarious shenanigans on set, wedding crashing, and spontaneous dips into the Pacific. But as the finale draws near, Dahlia and London's steamy relationship start to feel the heat both in and outside the kitchen, and they must figure it out if they have the right ingredients for a happily ever after. We're admitting another person here. Welcome. Originally from a small town in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania, we were just talking about that before the event started. Anita Kelly now lives in the Pacific Northwest with their family and a cat. I met the cat earlier.
Yeah.
A teen librarian by day, they write romance that celebrates queer love and all its infinite possibilities. Whenever not reading or writing, they're drinking too much tea, taking pictures, and dreaming of their next walk in the woods. They hope you get to pet a dog today, and also probably a cat. Timothy Janovsky is a queer multidisciplinary storyteller from New Jersey. He holds a bachelor's degree from Muhlenberg College and a self-appointed certificate in rom-com studies, accreditation pending. from yourself? Gosh, give yourself the accreditation. When he's not daydreaming about young Hugh Grant, he's telling jokes, playing characters, and writing books. Never Been Kissed is his first novel. Alison Cochrun is a former high school English teacher and a current writer of queer love stories, including her debut novel, The Charm Offensive. She lives outside of Portland, Oregon, with her giant dog and a vast collection of brightly colored books. Welcome, Anita, Timothy, and Alison.
Thank you so much.
I can see your brightly colored books behind you.
Yes, there they are. Sort of see them with my having to be on my phone. Anita, how are you? It's been almost exactly 1 month since Love and Other Disasters came out. How has the last month been for you?
It's been amazing. It has been very wild. I'm very tired. But no, it's been incredible. It's been like, I can't believe how many people have read it and reached out, and it's just been very lovely. I am ready to enter like a cave in a few months and not talk to anybody for a long time, but it has been a very amazing month.
That's fantastic.
You can pull an Adele.
Oh, so sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say she could pull an Adele. Like they can pull an Adele. You know, Adele is doing she puts out an album and then she goes away for 3 years and she recuperates and then she puts out another album and then she does Vegas. And so Anita, I think you need one of those.
I was thinking just today about Suzanne Collins. I feel like it's kind of like the author equivalent of that, of she just like, you know, dropped the Hunger Games and was like, all right, bye. Like, I feel like I kind of like admire that now. Like that's kind of the dream. But
Anita's Reputation era.
Yeah.
I love
it. Anita, what has been your favorite part of this process so far?
Probably seeing all the creativity that readers do as well. Like I feel like that has been one of the things that has surprised me the most. Like I feel like a lot of times you hear about fan art, but I didn't know about all the other like creative ways that readers show their love of books. Like they do like manicures and like based on your book cover, and they cosplay your book cover, and they paint your book cover on rocks. And you know, it's other like really incredible things like that. They make candles inspired by your book, and you know, like, so all of those little things, anytime I see that, I'm always like, oh my God, like you just put time and effort into that. So that has been probably the coolest part of all of this. In addition to actually just, you know, hearing from readers. For some reason, I didn't think that people would actually like write to me and tell me how like they felt about my book, but they have. And so that has been also very humbling and amazing. So yes. I'm trying to get back to our questions.
I think Alison had one more question for you. Alison wanted to know what part of this process has surprised you the most. Is that also maybe
you already answered it? Yeah,
yeah.
The outpouring of love from readers, which is such a rewarding part.
People read it. That was really surprising.
Did you surprise yourself at all?
That's like a deep question, Timothy.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think at some point, I think when I like filled out my first interview, like set up interview questions, like at first, because I'm very good at being self-deprecating. And so at first, that's like, I type lots of like, ha-has, like LOLs and everything I write, because I don't know how else to communicate emotions. But I was like, maybe I should talk like I know what I'm talking about and like pretend that I'm a like professional bitch. And so I did that. And so that was kind of fun. And yeah, kind of like taking ownership of, no, I did write this book and I'm proud of it. And I can talk about it like I know what I'm saying. So trying to do that as much as possible does make me feel proud of myself.
As you should be. You are amazing. So you should be proud of yourself and talk about this book. I'm just realizing that like, I actually don't know the story of kind of what led to the inspiration for Love and Other Disasters. I'm sure you've answered that question a million times. But could you briefly tell us like what inspired you to write this amazing book about a reality cooking show? And also, the first romance I've personally ever read with a non-binary main character.
Yeah, I feel like both of those things, the cooking show and the non-binary character, like came together just very perfectly in this book, because I knew for a while that I'd wanted to write a love interest that was non-binary. And I'd written a couple books before this one, but I was joking in some of my other events that I'm not very good at like conflict or stakes or plot, and so I like want to write about happy people being nice to each other and then kissing, and so I was watching MasterChef one day, which is my favorite, and I was like, well, maybe I could write a show like this, and because that gives lots of natural conflict and stakes if you're on this very dramatic, like overly dramatic show, and so yeah, I just kind of went from there, and it ended up working out. But it was very fun to write this book and to make the world of Chef special, and it does set up a very logical kind of like pacing as you are writing, like, each chapter gets you closer to the finale. And so there's always something to propel, like what's going to happen next. And so really it was kind of like a writing cheat to like make this natural, easy setup for me.
I agree with full of lies. Your plot, your tension are always amazing. So
I have a piggyback question off of Allison's question, if that's cool. This is not a spoiler. Your book's been out, like Alison said, for a month, but I have to know what came first, the fruit or the sex? Did you say I'm gonna write a scene that has sexy fruit, or did you say this is a book about food and there has to be food in the sex? I just have to know.
That has been, I'd probably say, the most like ubiquitous reaction that people comment the most on is the nectarine scene, which has been fun, which I should have like predicted. I don't know why it's like funny to me, but no, that was not really planned. I really feel like that was a scene that just kind of happened as I was writing. Like, I think I was literally like writing that conversation between Dahlia and London after Dahlia kind of has like the daydream of like being domestic with London. And then like when London asks her about it, and I can't remember what she says, but she's like, I was just thinking about what we can do with food. And I think like I literally, like I was just like thinking it along with writing that conversation. And then I wrote the scene, but no, it was not like pre-planned at all.
I'm glad you pantsed it. That's exactly what my heart wanted to hear.
But I know this is like an event for me, but I also want to talk about your books. And so can you talk about what inspired both of your books? And I know you both have multiple books. You have multiple coming out, Timothy, and you have another one coming out, Alison, so you can choose which one you want to speak on. But what inspired your writing?
Tim, you want to go first? Talk about Never Been Kissed?
Sure. So Never Been Kissed, I have my arc right here, which has Alison's nice shiny blurb on the top. And Anita's nice shiny blurb is on my bookmarks. But Never Been Kissed is pitched as To All the Boys I've Loved Before, set at a drive-in movie theater. It tells the story of Ren Roland. He's never been kissed, never been in love, but he wants a movie perfect ending more than anything. So on the night of his 22nd birthday, he sends some drunken and very ill-advised emails to some boys he crushed on previously, and gets a response from his number one high school crush, Derek, who just happens to be working at the drive-in movie theater this summer, which means sparks and chemistry and refurbishing an old house and watching movies and maybe kissing, hopefully eventually. Yeah, and the book was really just inspired by, there are actually a lot of drive-ins in Pennsylvania, and where my partner lives in Schnecksville, there is one of the oldest continuously operating drive-ins in the country. And we went there a lot during the pandemic to have like kind of a communal movie experience with other people safely from our car. And so I went there a couple times and just was like, this is romantic as heck. There needs to be some popcorn cuddles happening somewhere in here. And so that's really what inspired the book, plus my love of romantic comedies.
That is the most Pennsylvania town name I've ever heard. Schnecksville?
Schnecksville, yep. Mm-hmm. That's it. I think it's technically an ore field. Like, we're just surrounded by a bunch of fields.
Yeah.
How about you, Alison?
So I can talk about my book, The Charm Offensive, because it's really like quite similar to Anita's in a lot of ways, right? It's set on a reality television show, except The Charm Offensive is set on a reality dating show. And it also is like a behind the scenes love story, except in Charm Offensive, it's a love story between the star of the show and then his producer. And so instead of falling in love with one of his contestants, he falls in love with his producer, who has been tasked with the job of making him camera ready when he is very much not that. And so for me, like the story of how I came up with the idea of The Charm Offensive is long, but it kind of boils down to this question of like, I watch The Bachelor a lot in the same way that Anita watches MasterChef. And I think I was kind of just like, but what if it was gay instead? And so a lot of it kind of came from this idea of kind of playing around with like queerness, but specifically within like a very heteronormative world. And that is like the world of reality dating shows.
I also see a question here if Alison can talk about the cover of your next book, which I also wanted to talk about.
Oh, yeah, we can totally. I saw that comment was from Lori. Hi, Lori. So Lori runs the romance book club at Lincoln High School here in Portland, and it's like very cool. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you want to know about my cover? It's out in the world. It is purple. And I love it. I love it, like the purpleness of it. My second book is called Kiss Her Once for Me. It comes out November 1st, and it is a sapphic holiday rom-com. So kind of like a Hallmark Christmas movie, also nothing like a Hallmark Christmas movie. Tim and I, incidentally, both have queer holiday rom-coms coming out this year. So his other book, You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince, which also has an amazing cover, comes out, is it October 4th, Tim?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So just like a couple weeks apart.
That's the day after my birthday, Tim. Thank you for the birthday present.
Well, I've already sent it to you, but I'll send you a physical version.
No, it's putting it out in the world is your gift to me. But no, Alison, I've been so busy this week. I feel like I haven't been able to comment on your newest cover yet, but I loved it so much because as soon as I saw it, I was like, those are Portland lesbians. Like, just like, I'm like, I know those dykes. I've seen those people before.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, big place in Portland, and I'm very excited about that. So, yeah.
I was curious if we could circle back to what you were saying about watching Chopped, right? Or MasterChef. Mm-hmm. And sorry, Chopped is my favorite. So I just kind of self-inserted there for you. And The Bachelor. This is kind of unrelated, but I'm so curious, and I've been talking to Alison about this, about this idea of watching together and how that's like a romantic thing. So TCO has, what is the name of the show again, Alison, that they watch?
Well, they watch The Expanse. The
Expanse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They watch The Expanse. Love and Other Disasters has Mamma Mia, and Never Been Kissed has various movies throughout the whole thing. I want to know what you both find romantic about the act of watching something with another person, and do you have personal experience that you pull from when you write about that?
Mm-hmm. I love this question. I feel like I think there's something like inherently romantic about sharing something you love with another person, right? And I think that like in all of those scenes, that's like a connective thread, is this idea of, in some ways, like when you love a television show or a movie, you're kind of like giving that person a part of yourself and being like, here, this is this thing that means so much to me. I'm actually showing you a part of my heart. Like, do you like it? And it can be like super vulnerable and also kind of scary. And so I think that is definitely a part of at least what goes into it for me in these scenes, like having moments where characters watch something together as like a way of bonding and developing their connection a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely, like sharing something that you love with your person, which is a form of showing your love. I also think that like the act of watching something specifically, like you were saying, Timothy, it's kind of, even though you're watching a noisy thing, it's kind of an act of being quiet together, which I think is a very intimate thing to do, to just like sit in quiet next to another person. And so I think that also like is a big reason why, movies are such a standard for dates and relationships and such, because you get to be with the person, but without the pressure of like having to talk. Like you can just like feel the physical presence of the other person, which I think is, like I said, like a really personal thing to do. So yeah, I do. Although I love your book, Timothy, because it is so much about the power of movies. My scene with Mamma Mia was really just like a funny, like I just wanted to mention Mamma Mia too in a book. And
so much respect for that decision.
It was one of those moments where like it was funny with the editing of this book, since it was my first, traditionally published book, that there was a lot of stuff that was like, editors are going to cut this part out, and then my editor didn't. And so like Mamma Mia 2 got in there. But
I love that.
What about you, Timothy?
I honestly do not know. And this is what's been plaguing me the whole time. And that's why I wanted to hear your answers, because I noticed that I've been editing You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince, and it's going to go off into ARC phase really soon. And I realized I wrote 2 basement cuddle movie watching scenes, like in both Never Been Kissed and You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince. I was like, something deep inside me says this is the pinnacle of romance for some reason, and I don't know why. And my partner and I do watch a lot of movies together at night, and that's kind of the way we unwind. So I liked what you both said about like showing a little piece of your, like, hi, do you like this thing that like I love and holds really dear to me? And then you get to talk about it. And I think that's the fun part too, is being able to discuss it afterwards and kind of get different reactions. Yeah.
I also think, like you said, that you were noticing that you were writing similar scenes in Matthew Prince. Like I think as writers, like we do often come to those same kind of scenes, and I don't think there's anything wrong in that. Like I've also noticed in my other books I'm working on that I have like similar scenes of closeness where they're talking about food, or even if the book isn't about food, or things like that. And so I think we naturally gravitate towards those things that we personally find romantic, and I don't think that's bad. I feel like I used to think like, yeah, everything you write has to be brand new and different, but I think it's fine to have the things that feel right for you, and repeating them with different characters, because it is always different with different characters.
I am so interested, if I shall go off script, about what you said, Anita, about things you thought your editor would cut in edits that they just let go. Alison, do you have anything like that you might have noticed in either Kiss Her Once for Me or The Charm Offensive?
I mean, I feel like there are so many things in Charm that I thought they were going to cut. Some of them silly, like some of them very serious. Like there are a lot of conversations in my book Charm, like that deal with like the asexuality spectrum, and like these very like long conversations that use a lot of like terminology within the queer community. that I a little bit thought would be cut. And then, I don't know, all I can think about honestly is the fact that they did cut the scene where the characters sing Love Story by Taylor Swift, and how that like haunts me forever. But they were like, literally, no, you can't afford these lyrics. So they made me get rid of that scene. So that is a scene that did not make the cut. Yeah.
Can you include it in, is it still violating copyright if you include it in like a newsletter?
I think so. I have to look into this.
Damn
Somebody
it.
else asked me that question and I was like, oh, I have no idea. But I think maybe like it's copyright infringement, like no matter what. Like, and I love my girl Taylor, and I love that she like keeps her music, you know, make sure paid for it. But yeah, I think if I used it at all, I would have to. Yeah. So
yeah, I did a lot of Googling about lyrics and copyright when I was writing my Moonlighters novellas. Moonlighters, that was hard for me to say, because it's all about singing songs and music at a karaoke bar. And I'm like, how can I do this? But yeah, and I do like fudge things a little bit, but like basically if you like reword things, so it's not like the exact like lines over and over. So I do that a lot in my novellas. But yeah, actually in my book 2 that I'm editing now, there's like a very crucial scene that involves Wonderwall by Oasis. And I know I'm going to have to take out the lyrics before it's final, but I just like, even in my latest like version that I sent to my editor, I'm like, I know that the lyrics are still in there. I'm gonna have to take them out, but I just like couldn't do it. The lyrics are so perfect for the scene and the characters.
I have a scene like that in my book as well, Anita, with like Celine Dion, with a Dion song, and like I know they're gonna cut it, and I'm so sad, and I refuse to rewrite it. So there we are.
Oh no.
Actually, I do want to mention, or you made me think about something, Alison, when you're talking about how in the Trauma Offensive, you talk a lot about, you know, like the asexuality spectrum and such. And so I kind of want to talk about like trends that you have seen in queer romance as of late, or things you haven't seen in queer romance that you would like to see more of. And yeah, so maybe like some good things that you've been seeing and some things that we think we could see more of in queer romance. Go ahead.
Alison, you want to start?
Sure, I can go first. So I feel like one of the things I really love that we're seeing more and more in queer romance is like inclusion of like people on the asexuality spectrum. And so like Tim's book, Never Been Kissed, does an amazing job with kind of handling demisexual representation on the page and a character who's like exploring their sexuality in that capacity. And it means a lot to me. And so I love that book very much. And then I also just read Something Fabulous by Alexis Hall. And that also has demisexual rep that I found like really relatable and just connected to in so many ways. And it was really nice to see that on the page. And so I think increasingly we are seeing that within romance novels. I think one thing that I would love to see more of is like gender expansive characters. And there aren't very many examples of that within like mainstream traditionally published romance. And so I hope that we continue to see more trans characters, more non-binary characters like we saw in your book, Anita, because I know like so many people, every time I post about your book, Anita, people message me to tell me like what your book meant to them. So I know that it is like so impactful for so many readers to see themselves represented in that way.
I want to say to that too, that Anita, when I was reading Love and Other Disasters, the moment where London starts reading the messages for the first time in the book, I teared up in that moment. And I feel like there is this beautiful trend towards queerness without boundaries. We're not just we're not making characters that just fit neatly into a box in order to be put into marketing copy. We're writing these very honest and authentic queer people that just are existing, and that identity is not static, that it can change and grow over time. that's one of the things that I really loved about Dahlia in the book as well, that Dahlia is this queer character who is just like blossoming into her own over the course of the show. And Anita, not to gas you up completely, but this event is about you and for you. I want to say that personally, like when reading this book, I noticed that I love that these characters weren't tethered to any one idea of themselves, that they were on this cooking show with like really no dream of being a famous chef. They were like, I love to cook. Like, this is an integral part of me. And I think that's so wonderful, because a lot of times we see characters that are like, this is my one love, and I'm going to pursue that until the end. And I think people are so much more messy than that. So I want to see more of that in all kinds of romance. Doesn't even have to be queer.
Yeah, I feel like Helena described Dahlia really well. I can't remember exactly what she said. But she's like, I love that Dahlia's like just kind of a mess for no real reason. You know, I mean, obviously she is divorced, like she has stuff going on, but she's like, she's just kind of a mess. And I'm like, that's what I like to write about. Yeah, it definitely, you know, it does make like a clearer plot line a lot of times when people do have really clear goals and like, yeah, like you said, like, this is what I want. But I have never experienced that in my life of being like, this is why I'm on this earth. I'm always kind of a mess. And so that's what I am good at writing about, I guess. But I'm glad that resonates with people, because I do think that's kind of a universal experience for a lot of people. But yeah, I just wanted to say that I was really affected by both of your books, since you both like explore the asexual spectrum in both of your books, which I think is so important, and which I feel like I hadn't seen a lot of before the last few years in traditional publishing, which I feel like whenever there's discussions about this stuff, we have to say in traditional publishing, because indie romance and self-pub has been doing a lot more things for a lot more years. But like in, like I just saw Jack talk about, I'm coming out with my last novella in my karaoke series in a couple weeks. And one of the characters, she never like names it like on page, but she is pretty much demisexual as well. And I feel like, I don't know if I would have written that if I hadn't read your books first. And so I think, like having the representation on the page is really important. And it is also like, it's wonderful, but it is also kind of, I have felt like in the last month, kind of a lot of, I don't know, like weight, I guess, like, I don't know how to explain it. But like being that first non-binary character that a lot of people have read, it's wonderful, but I wish that I don't know, that I didn't have to be the first for so many people, that like I never really wanted to be like the first. I didn't want to carry this mantle. And so, yeah, it would be great to have even more, like you said, gender expansive characters out there, because like London is just one non-binary story, and there's so many different ways to be non-binary and trans, and like we really need that in queer literature and queer romance especially. Like right now I am reading an unpublished book, so I can't talk about it like in great detail yet, but it's a romance, and it's about a trans baseball player, and it is like so good. Like I'm like dying reading it. It's so good, and I can't wait for it to be out there. But like it has experiences I don't think I've read in romance before. And so, and I know would mean a lot to a lot of people. Like I've read, like it's weird, like I've thought about this a lot. I feel like I've almost read more like non-binary and trans storylines in historical romance of, like characters that like women that cross-dressed, or that, were able to like live as other genders in historical romance, but I haven't seen as much of it in contemporary, which is kind of strange, at least in traditional publishing. But yeah, I would love more trans voices on the page. And I think that we are getting there slowly but surely. But yeah, hopefully we only see even more of it in the future. Stop it. My dog is scratching at my door. Sorry.
Just a real quick plug, if anyone here has not read Anita's novellas for like the Moonlighters series, they are incredible. So definitely add them to your list. Sing Anyway and Our Favorite Songs are so wonderful. And your new one comes out March 1st, right?
Yes.
Yes, I'm so excited. And I'm getting the title. Is it Unfinished Business? Is that no?
It is Wherever Is Your Heart.
So I
which
was
is
that
which is
title
a
was
Brandi Carlile song, because the story involves Brandi Carlile. I think it's like the gayest thing I might have written yet. Yeah, so it's just like two butches who are old and have bad backs and are cranky, and takes place during Pride. And yeah, I was really worried about it for some reason because it's very quiet, and it's the first thing I've written where it's low drama on purpose. Like there's no dark moment. It's really just like two people deciding to love each other. And I was really worried that it would be boring. And it actually felt wrong. Like as I was writing it, I'm like, no, I need the third act breakup. But like these bitches are too old. Like they don't have time for that. So, but anyway, so I've had some friends and other people and I've sent out to some early readers, and anyway, people have enjoyed it. And so I'm just like, you would think like with putting out a few things now, I'd get more used to it, but you really don't. Every single thing you put out is terrifying. I'm convinced everyone's going to hate my next book, After Love and Other Disasters. So every single time it's the worst, but then people like it and you're like, oh, okay, maybe it's not the worst. But yeah, so it's also the shortest novella, so of all three, so it's a very quick read, but hopefully, yes, people enjoy it, and that is out on March 1st.
So excited.
I have a question based on that. I feel like, Anita, you do an excellent job of creating really safe spaces for your queer readers on the page. Like it really does feel that you treat your readers very gently while still being able to tackle topics that might be hard to grapple with, especially in real life. And so I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to that, about how you did that in Love and Other Disasters, and how you do it in your novellas as well, because your novellas are really, they're really big vibes. They really have like that kind of like chunky knit sweater that you just pull over and feel really good in. And I just want to know, what is it? And I know you just have a warm presence as it is, so I can tell that bleeds into your writing, but I want to know a little bit more about your process when you do that.
Yeah, a friend actually recently asked me a very similar question in another interview. And I think my answer was that I'm just like a really wimpy person and don't like to see people being mean to each other. So I just like to write warm vibes. But in Love and Other Disasters, it was important to me that London wasn't misgendered on page, which honestly was not hard to do. Like it wasn't hard to, make that choice. But it has been interesting how many people have commented on that. Like that's been a very big theme of reactions, of people being grateful for that. And actually, when I first wrote one of my first drafts of this book, like the sex that London was born with, like was never revealed on page. Like they were always just, they, them, and it was never revealed. And then like I had a conversation with my mentors about it, and we decided to that basically it kind of like limited London's backstory, that like who London used to be before they came out and started to transition to be non-binary, like is still part of their story. And so I wanted to be able to include more of that, like honestly, but so I purposely didn't like really include though like that part of their backstory until like halfway or maybe more than halfway through the book, so that people really could just see them as non-binary like from the start and who they were from the start. And I'm glad that seems to work for people. But it is tough because then, like, this is actually something I've been thinking about a lot, because in the second book that I'm currently editing, there is like a more upsetting scene of like homophobia on page, with like homophobic slurs on page. And so I've had like a conversation with some of my gay friends about it and whether I should still include it or not, because I don't want to have readers be like taken aback or like feel like suddenly my book isn't a safe space. But at the same time, like I'm kind of writing the second book to purpose. So my second book takes place on the Pacific Crest Trail. It's like all in the backwoods, like hiking story. And like part of my purpose with writing this book is to expose a lot of the crappiness that is in outdoor like recreation culture. Like it's very like white, cis, hetero, like bro culture. And I wanted to like write a very soft gay love story in that culture, but also kind of expose, you know, a lot of the sexism and homophobia and racism that exists in like REI bros. And so like part of me still wants that conversation in there to basically like there's like a purpose for it of why I'm including it. And also like both of the characters react very differently to it. And so that's kind of like an interesting, like, you know, scene of like how everyone's trauma is different and everyone's processing of like these experiences is different. So I'm still kind of wrestling with how to include that scene, but do still keep it a safe space for readers. But I feel like with London, like if I had misgendered him or misgendered them on page, like that would have been something as the writer that I was choosing to do to them, which I feel like wouldn't have been right. Whereas just, you know, having the characters be exposed to these horrible things and see their reaction, you know, that's just kind of a natural part of storytelling and character exploration. So it is something that I'm constantly trying to explore, of including like these realities of our queer characters while also, yes, keeping it a safe space. So I'm really glad that it feels like a safe space for so many people, and I will try to continue to do that.
I love everything that you just said, and I sort of have a follow-up question, or maybe it's actually a follow-up comment because I feel like you sort of answered it. But on Instagram today, I like asked people about questions they had for you, and one of the questions that came up was this question of like, how do you show the realities of what it means to be a queer person while also not like centering homophobia? And I think that like, yeah, you kind of address that it's difficult to write these romances and pretend in some way like completely erase, I think, the realities of our existence.
Yeah.
So.
And it's hard too, because I'm very tuned into like, you know, queer Twitter and like queer romance Twitter. And I feel like, well, you know, like we're a community that really likes beating each other up. But I feel like there's like always like constantly different like conversations going on of like, you know, like, well, it's so great that now like not every queer story has to be a coming out story. It's great that not every queer story has to be like filled with trauma. And that's true. Like I really love queer happily ever afters. Obviously that's what I write, but now anytime I do write about like queer trauma, or like, yeah, like my main character in the second book is dealing more with coming out as an adult, I'm like, oh, people think I'm going backwards, or like, like I'm focusing too much on the trauma. And so like, it's hard, like wanting to please everyone. But yeah, but at the same time, like we are still constantly coming out, like no matter what, you know, age it happens at, and we are still constantly dealing with trauma. So it's very, yeah, like if you want to write a realistic book, like I was kind of worried that like including any transphobia in London's story would be looked at negatively, but I also didn't feel like it would be completely realistic that their story was just totally happy. They never dealt with any obstacles being out as non-binary to the world. So yeah, I feel like it's a really tricky balance as queer writers. I'm sure you both have felt that too.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's too why it's important to have like lots and lots of different queer stories, because yeah, you see all the time people want stories where queerness is not in any way related to the conflict, where they're not navigating their queerness or coming out on the page. And I'm glad that we have stories like that. But yeah, for me too, I tend to gravitate towards stories not like that in both my writing and my reading.
Yeah.
I will say too, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think queer romance, like inherently, like is hopeful and is joyful, because even if there's trauma on page, like there's always going to be a happy ever after. And I think that is like revolutionary in and of itself.
Agreed. Sorry, Tim.
No, I was just going to say that I think there's always a conversation too about queerness having context in the story. And we as writers have such a difficult job to take the reader by the hand and like pull them through the story and to tell them that like with the shiny beacon of hope of the happily ever after at the end. And I think, I mean, Alison can probably agree too, as we're working on our Christmas book side by side. Our books, you know, have this like bright, shiny holiday veneer on them, but we are both writing about characters who have inner wounds and conflicts that they are still wrestling with queerness. I think I was just editing a scene in Matthew Prince today where he drops into a small town where his grandparents live, and it's not an issue, but he says like, oh no, I'm gay, like that's not a big deal. And the person he's speaking to is like, oh no, I'm gay as well, like I know you're gay. And he's like, well, I have to come out all the time, like everywhere I go, like I have to keep doing this is just a reality of who I am being in a new place. And I think it's reassuring to readers, at least I feel that way when I read both of your work and other work by queer authors, where they reflect an experience that I've had in the world on the page, and it makes me feel a lot less alone. And both of your books have done that for me. So it's so nice to get to talk to you now.
Oh.
One thing I am realizing is that it is almost 7:50, and I wanted to make sure that if anyone had any questions that they wanted answered from Anita, please feel free to like drop it in the chat. I am so sorry, due to technical difficulties, I'm on my phone, so I cannot check the chat, but are there other questions in the chat that we should address?
I'd be happy to read questions from the chat.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Michael. I'm sorry.
There was one earlier, and I think you got to, what are your favorite books, past or forthcoming, that include good asexual representation? Did you get to that one?
I mean, yeah, we sort of did. Tim's book, Never Been Kissed, is a great example. Like I just read Something Fabulous by Alexis Hall that I recommend.
Yeah.
The Romantic Agenda by Claire Kahn is coming out, I think in April, and that has both the main character and the love interest are on the asexual spectrum. And so that's another good example.
Cool. Do we have other questions? Again, feel free to type them in the chat, or you can go down to the reactions menu and click the little raise hand button there if you feel like popping on the screen to ask. Anyone?
I will also, while people might be typing other questions, there was a question in one of the questions that Tim and Alison sent me earlier of questions we might answer that I thought was really interesting. Where is it? When was the first time you saw yourself reflected in a love story, either in a book or a movie or TV show? I would love to hear both of your answers.
I will say in a TV show, I think for the first time that I saw a love story that was like mine, and I feel maybe a little embarrassed by this, is Kurt and Blaine from Glee, was kind of the first time that I had the butterfly feeling, like of seeing two men together on screen. But in book form, it was Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. I had the lovely privilege of speaking with her recently about Never Been Kissed, and I had to tell her that when I read Simon Versus for the first time, I remember highlighting a bunch of my favorite lines and then tweeting them at her, like kind of in a rapid fire excitement burst of being a senior in high school and actually reading a book where the character sounded like me and it wasn't someone older talking down to me. And I was like, I know you're not going to remember this, but you were so kind when you responded, and it just made my whole life. And so that's it for me.
It is still, I feel like that book is always going to be so good. Like, it's kind of amazing how timeless that book is. And I wish that there were more like queer rom-com movies for teens too, because I advise a GSA at my day job, a Gay Straight Alliance, and we used to have like a wintertime movie night around winter break, and for like 3 years, like we just watched Love, Simon like every single time, because there weren't, like, we can never think of better options. And like, I love Love, Simon, but I'm like, come on, give like more for the queer teens, Hollywood.
Have you watched The Thing About Harry?
I have not.
Oh, it's just like a queer freeform spin on When Harry Met Sally, and it is just an adorable time.
I love a
Karamo from Queer Eyes in it. It's great.
It would maybe require permission slips for a GSA party, but
yeah.
I love freeform. Kids watch freeform.
I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know. I remember when I did GSA, we watched Milk way back in the day, and like that was fine. So maybe it'd be fine.
Yeah. We do have a question in the chat. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. In the chat, Jacqueline Sewell says, "Is there a trope archetype you haven't yet written but want to write in the future?" For any of you, I suppose. All of you.
So I will say, I mean, there's lots of tropes that I have not done. Like my first couple of books really haven't relied on tropes like too heavily. But my third book, so the third book in this series, I'm like experimenting with fake dating, which I've never written before. And it's so funny because I keep being like, this sucks. Like, it's just not realistic enough, even though I have read like 500 million fake dating storylines. And like, no matter how unrealistic they are, I always love it. I'm always like, yes, absolutely, this could happen. I believe it 100%. But for some reason, when I'm writing it, I'm like, oh, no one's gonna buy this. But so I'm looking forward to continuing to play with that, hopefully, for book 3. But what about you, Tim and Alison?
I would say that I really want to write a Grumpy Sunshine, like a true Grumpy Sunshine. I think it's a fun dynamic to play with. But also I'm excited to maybe try like a time jump kind of. I want to do some kind of something that has like a magical element to it. I feel like there's always something really romantic about that. So I'm excited to maybe dive into that.
I feel like real. Oh, sorry, Tim.
No, I was just going to say, I feel like now I have to write a reality show book because you both have
to be part of this club.
So yeah. Just to be a part of the club. Yep.
Yeah, it's required. I love enemies to lovers so much in my books. Like, and I want to write or find a way to write a like enemies to lovers romance so badly, but I wanted to have like the vibes of Gideon the Ninth and like the rivalry of like Gideon and Harrow, where they're like literally killing each other, but like not that. That's my dream that I would love to achieve. Gideon the Ninth is a fantastic book. I see your face, Tim. Like, it's so good. I love it. So that's my dream, but like somehow translate that to like not stabbing and not necromancers, but like that tension and those vibes, which are just flawless.
Sounds like Clark Marks will read that book.
Yeah, thank you, Clark.
I so admire people that can do enemies to lovers really well, because I feel like it is tricky.
It's so hard.
Because sometimes like in some enemies to lovers, I'm like, you're just dicks. Like I don't think that this is romantic. And so, but sometimes it is like so good. And so, yeah. And so like having that line between like, abusive relationship, not romantic, to like, oh no, this is the most romantic thing I've ever read. I don't know if I could ever do it, because I, as seen in Love and Other Disasters, they kind of like have a weird vibe for like a chapter, and then it's over. Like, I can do enemies to lovers for one chapter, maybe two, and then I just want them to be nice to each other. But kudos to people who can do it. It's a great trope.
A good question. Thanks, Jacqueline.
Yeah.
Do we have time for probably one more question, if anyone has one? Yeah.
Alison, I don't know if Alison ever answered the first time you saw yourself in a book or a movie.
So yeah, I feel like my answer, so I asked this question, and I think I maybe asked it because my answer is like really complex. Because I'm so glad
minutes. No,
I'm so sorry. I'm so glad that you're writing a book about an adult coming out, right? Like, so I know, like we talked about, there's a lot of kind of a lot of people are done with coming out stories, but as someone who came out just 2 years ago, I love seeing adult coming out stories, because so many of the coming out stories I read when I first started reading queer books were teen coming out stories, and primarily like stories about men, like, or young boys like figuring out their sexuality. And so most of them were stories, where like I connected with them very deeply, but I couldn't really figure out why. And so honestly, I think the first book where like I knew that I was seeing myself fully represented is not a fiction book. It's called Would You Rather? And it's a memoir by Katie Heaney, which I highly recommend. She wrote a memoir when she was like 25 about how she had like never been kissed, never dated any men, like this whole story. And then shortly after publishing that, realized that she was a lesbian, and then wrote another memoir about kind of figuring out at like age 28 about her sexuality, and all the reasons why kind of society and like compulsory heterosexuality and messages like made it really difficult for her to do that. And so that is a book that is like very near and dear to my heart, because I was able to connect with it in that way.
Yeah. Well, I'm very glad that I will at least have one fan for my book.
It'll be me. I love it. Adult coming out stories. Love them.
I know. I feel very bad for my editor, who I think might be on this call. But I was contracted to write rom-coms. And then I'm like, here's this really heavy story about someone coming out as an adult and being disowned. And they walk through the desert for 2,000 miles. Let's sell it.
Sounds hilarious.
But anyway, so I'm trying to make it a little bit more fun. But yes.
Let's hear from Morgan. They've raised their hand to ask a question here. What is your question, Morgan?
Hi. Okay, so I just wanted to ask, I recently read Love and Other Disasters and The Charm Offensive, because my absolute favorite sort of romance or book in general is books that take place in the entertainment industry, because I love it. So I was just curious if you guys had any fascination with the entertainment industry before you decided to write a book set in it, or if it was just about like reality TV specifically.
I'll let Alison answer first, because I think that she did like a lot of research for hers.
Oh, I mean, like, no, I mean, so yes, to answer your question, Morgan, yes, I also love the entertainment industry. I mean, like 14-year-old me was hardcore going to be a screenplay writer. Like that was my dream. And so I used to really intensely follow like the film industry. And that was like my core personality in my adolescence. But this book didn't really come out of my love of the entertainment industry so much as my like weird relationship, with like reality dating shows. But it definitely made it more fun to write. So once I decided to set it like on a reality dating show, it was really fun to play around with like the behind the scenes, because really like my book doesn't really take place so much like on the show as it does just like on the set of the show. And Anita, your book is pretty similar.
Mm-hmm. I will say too, and I think like Timothy's book is also very similar because actually Timothy's is more about the entertainment like business, I think, even than ours. You will love it. But I do think that queer people have, in general, in my observation, like we definitely do have an affinity for the entertainment industry in Hollywood. And because for a long time, like that was the only place where we could sometimes find, like stories that had queer people, like, especially if we were closeted or didn't know who we were yet. And so like, even if they were just like queer actors or actresses, that we knew about being out that we could follow. So yeah, I think there is kind of this natural affinity for queer people to love movies and things like that. But yeah, with Love and Other Disasters, I really didn't know a lot about, like the behind the scenes of reality TV. I did happen to just be kind of lucky to have a friend who lives in LA and her partner works on reality TV. And so I was able to ask like some questions about, like the ins and outs of things like that. That was kind of the extent of my research.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for reading.
All right. Well, we're a little after 8, so seems like a good natural stopping point. Thank you guys so much. It was really a great discussion, and thanks to everyone here for turning out. It was a really great crowd.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
I will one more time put the link in the chat here so you can run over to Annie Bloom's and buy all of these books. That'd be really great. We'd really appreciate it. And this is being recorded. It'll be up on our YouTube channel probably later tonight. You can go to that same link in like an hour or so and find that link there. So if you know of people who weren't able to make it tonight, they can go and watch it there. It'll be up there forever, for as long as YouTube's around.
Yeah, go pre-order Never Been Kissed by Timothy Janovsky.
Yeah.
Do it.
And the new Moonlighters novella and Kisser Ones for Me.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you
Thank you
so
guys for
much,
doing
everybody.
So much.
Have a good night.